Welcome back to Statistics Made Simple. I'm Savita Balsang, and in this video I'm solving the first unit test paper for the first PUCs, which is conducted by the PU board. So let me now start solving the paper. It's important that you read the instructions carefully, and the most important one is the fourth one, that is section A should be written in the beginning of the answer booklet. So starting with section A, the first main, choose the correct answer from the choices given. So each of these two questions will carry 1 mark, and it's important that you write the question and the selected option. The first main, the statistical study of human population is called, so we all know the answer, it is demography. The second question, the correction factor for the class 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49 is, the different options are 0.5, 1, 0.75, 0.25. Let me now show you how to find out the correction factor. So the first class interval is 10 to 19 and the second one is 20 to 29. So let us find out the difference between the lower limit of the second class interval and the upper limit of the first class interval. So 20 minus 19 is equal to 1, and this difference, it has to be divided by 2, which gives us the correction factor. Half is 0.5. So the correct answer is A, 0.5. Second main, match the following. So there are 3 questions and each of them will carry 1 mark. So the third question, secondary data, is newspaper. Then frequency density, we know it is F divided by W, or it is the frequency divided by the width of the class interval. And the arithmetic mean of 65, 67, 70, 74, 78 is 70.8. So x bar is equal to 65 plus 67 plus 70 plus 74 plus 78 divided by the total number of observations are 5. This is 354 divided by 5, which gives us the arithmetic mean as 70.8. It's very obvious also otherwise. Third main, fill in the blanks by choosing the appropriate word from those given in the brackets. The options are 1 and width. So here it is required that you write the entire sentence and then give in your answer. So the fourth one, the difference between the upper and lower class limits of a class interval is the width of the class interval. Multiple bar diagram is a type of one-dimensional diagram. Now let us move on to the fourth main. Answer the following questions and each of these questions will carry 1 mark. So there are 2 questions. The sixth one, define continuous variable. So it is required that you write the answer in one sentence. So a variable which assumes all possible values in a given range is called a continuous variable. The seventh question, what is tabulation of data? So tabulation is a systematic representation of classified data. So the word classified is important, otherwise you will not be given 1 mark. Data in the form of rows and columns. So tabulation is a systematic representation of classified data in the form of rows and columns. Section B. The fifth main, answer any three of the following questions. Each of these questions will carry 2 marks each. So it is sufficient that you write 2 points. Eighth question, mention 2 characteristics of statistics. So when this particular question is asked, you have to mention the characteristics which are defined in Horace Secris' definition of statistics. So you can write single or isolated items cannot be considered as statistics. Then statistics is affected by a multiplicity of causes. Then statistics is always numerically expressed. It is enumerated and estimated, and data should be collected in a systematic manner either by the questionnaire method or by the schedule method, and data should be collected by only skilled persons. So you can write any 2 points out of these which are mentioned. Ninth one, write 2 methods of sampling. So in statistics, the different types of sampling are, the first one is simple random sampling. Then second, we have systematic sampling. And the third is stratified sampling. So if you check my videos, you will get the explanation on all these 3 types of sampling, but there's no need to explain. Now, because they have said mention 2 methods of sampling, out of these 3, you can write any 2. And it is important that you include the word simple for random sampling. And don't write the answer as sampling, random sampling and non-random sampling. In statistics, the correct answer for the methods of sampling are simple random sampling, systematic sampling, and stratified sampling. Now let's move on to the 10th question. Define chronological classification. Give an example. So classification of the units on the basis of time is called as chronological classification. So some of the examples can be population recorded on census years. When I say census years, you have to mention it for different years. You know that census years are usually, a census is carried out in a span of 10 years. Then similarly, like profit of a company in different years. So either you can write the example in the form of a sentence, or you can even draw a table for different years and then mention what are the profits of the company in those different years. Or you can take like different states, and then you can record the amount of rainfall every month in these different states. That will be an example for chronological classification. The 11th question, write 2 comparisons between diagrams and graphs. So let me form a table where first I will list down some points for diagrams, and in the next column I will have graphs. So because it is a 2-mark question, even if you just write 1 point each for both the diagrams and graphs, you will get 2 marks. So all of you know that diagrams are usually drawn on plain paper, whereas graphs are drawn on graph sheets. Second, The second point would be, for a diagram, a suitable index or key is required, whereas for a graph, a suitable scale should be mentioned. For the x and y axis. There are various other points. That is, a diagram should not be overloaded with too much information. And you know that graphs are more accurate than diagrams. And usually for diagrams, so to indicate the different parts, you have to use different types of colors, shadings, and crossings. Okay, so these are some of the comparisons between diagrams and graphs. But if you write 1 point each for diagrams and graphs, you will get 2 marks. Now let us move on to the 12th question, that is, mention the different measures of averages. So when they say measures of averages, we are talking about measures of central tendency. The different measures of central tendency are, the first one is the arithmetic mean. The second is the median. Then third is the mode. Then fourth, you have the geometric mean. And the fifth is the harmonic mean. So because the question says mention the different measures of averages, it is preferred that you write all the 5 measures of central tendency. So moving now to section C. Section C comprises of 5-mark questions, and the 6th main, answer any 2 of the following questions. So the 13th question, mention 5 functions of statistics. So for each of the functions, you will be allotted 1 mark. So out of the various functions which I have listed, you can write down any 5 of them. That is, statistics, it simplifies the complexity of data or it reduces the bulk of data. Second, it helps in comparison of data, and it studies the extent of relationships between, say, it can be variables or different sets of data. Then it also helps in the administration of the state, and then by using statistics, trends and tendencies can be studied. This you will see in the chapter which you will be learning in second PUC, and it helps in the formulation of problems and also in testing of hypotheses. So the last point, again, we will be discussing it in chapters which are there in the second PUC portions. 14th question, what are the guidelines for the construction of a questionnaire? So there are more than 10 points, and for a 5-mark question, it is sufficient that you write only 5 points. Do not waste time writing all the points. So the first one is the number of questions should be as less as possible. Then the question should be simple to understand. Questions should be arranged logically. Answer to the question should be short, that is the yes or no type. Then as far as possible, questions regarding personal matters should be avoided. Then any clarifications you want to give to the questions, it should be supplied as a footnote. Then you should also give necessary instructions as to how to fill the questionnaire to the informants. Then questions which require mathematical rigor should be avoided. So try to avoid questions which are based on equations or related to mathematics, because it's difficult for people to understand and answer such questions. Then a questionnaire should also be attractive. The question should be framed such that whatever information the informants are giving, it can be cross-checked. For example, like Aadhaar card number, you can check whether it is relating to a particular person or not. Then questionnaire should also assure that the information supplied will be kept confidential and shall not be used for any sort of disadvantage. So formulating a blank table is an important and sure question even in the final exam. So let us learn how to prepare a blank table. So 15 question, prepare a blank table to show the distribution of students according to college, which is classified as government and private, faculty as science, commerce and arts, and gender, boys and girls. So it is first important that a suitable title be given to the table using the information which is given. So let me first write a title for this particular table. So a blank table representing the distribution of marks of students if you want, you can also include according to college, faculty, and gender. So remember that a title should usually be written in capital letters. And if required, you can also give a table number. I'll call it as 1. Now, whenever you form a blank table with 3 characteristics, when I say 3 characteristics in this question, you have the 3 different characteristics as college, faculty, and gender. Now, you have to take any of these 2 characteristics as 2 different rows, and then the other characteristic should be taken as a column. So we cannot form a table where you have college, government, private, and in the next row you have faculty, science, commerce, arts, and in the third row you have gender, boys, girls. Okay, that is not correct. So let me first take in the first row college, and college, you know, it is divided into 2 categories, that is government and private. Let us do this part first. Then this government colleges, they can be classified into boys, girls and total. Similarly, the students who are there in the private colleges are also classified into boys, girls, and then you'll have a total column. Now, the other possibility is students in government and private colleges. They can be classified into science, commerce, arts, and then you'll have the total column. Similarly, the private college students will be classified into science, commerce, arts, and total column. So that is a possibility which you can have. So there is no correct way as such to form a blank table. So in this table which I have drawn, I am dividing the students in government colleges into the 2 categories, that is boys, girls, total. Private college students are divided into boys, girls and total. So in the first row here, I have college, and then in the second row, I have gender, and I also have divided the second row into faculty. So corresponding to gender, you have boys, girls, total, boys, girls, total. Then under faculty, you have science, commerce, arts, and then you have the total. So also remember that the cells, that is the small squares which you have, they have to be filled with a dash or a blank symbol. And another important point to remember here is you should have an overall total column which is divided into boys, girls and total as well. Since we are using abbreviations in the table, you have to mention it as a footnote below the table. So under footnote, you can mention that B stands for boys, G stands for girls, and T stands for total. Also, you can mention the source from where you obtained this information. If you don't have any source, you can just put a blank. So the title for the blank table, it carries 1 mark along with the table number, footnote, source, and it is very important that you form the blank table correctly, which will carry 4 marks. And if you're using any abbreviations, it has to be mentioned as a footnote. Section D, 7th main, answer any one of the following questions. Each of these questions will carry 10 marks each. 17 question, draw less than and more than ogive to the following data. Locate the value of the median graphically. So they have given us the daily wages in the form of class intervals in rupees and a number of workers are given. So the first step is to mark the daily wages as class interval CI and the number of workers as the frequency F. Next, you add up all these frequencies and you will get capital N is equal to 230. Next, to draw the less than ogive and the more than ogive, you will need to form this table with 4 columns. So less than ogive, you will require the upper limit and the less than cumulative frequency. And for more than ogive, you need the lower limit of the class intervals and greater than cumulative frequencies. So the upper limits are 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 and 700. Now let us learn how to calculate the less than CF. So first start with the frequency 20. Next 20 is added to 40, you get 60. 60 plus 80, 140. 140 plus 60 is 200. 200 plus 20, 220. And 220 plus 10 is 230. Next, for greater than ogive, the lower limits of the class intervals are 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 and 600. To find out the greater than cumulative frequencies, first write the total frequency, that is 230. Then 230 minus 20 will give 210. 210 minus 40 will give 170. 170 minus 80 is 90. 90 minus 60 is 30. 30 minus 20 is 10. So it's very important that you learn thoroughly as to how to compute the less than CF and more than CF. Starting with the 16th question, for the following data regarding the income of government from different sources, draw a pie diagram. The given table in the question paper, I have formed it in a column format. So in the first column, we have the sources as customs, excise, income tax, corporate tax, and miscellaneous. In the second column, I have revenue in millions of rupees as 80, 190, 160, 75, and 35. Now, the first step is that we have to find out the total revenue. So, when you add up all these values, you will get the total as 540. So, here let me write the word total. Then now the next step is to find out the angle for each of the components, for which we have to write the formula angle equal to individual value divided by the total value into 360 degrees. So this formula, it will carry 1 mark. As an example, suppose I want to find out the angle for the component customs. This will be equal to the individual value is 80, the total value is 540 into 360, which will give us 53.33. So you can take 2 places after the decimal after rounding off. So this angle, I will write it in the table column, which has the heading as angle. Similarly, you find out the angles for the remaining components. So it is 126.67, then 106.67, 49.99, and then I have 23.33. So when you add up this, the total will be 360. So this I'm going to approximate as 53. This is 127, 107, then 50 and 23. So this will total up to 360 after approximation, because it is easier for us to mark the angles if it is a whole number. So that's why I have rounded off all the angles. Now the pie chart should be drawn only on a plain sheet of paper. Okay, for me it is easier to explain because I've already drawn it in this graph sheet of paper, but make sure that you draw the pie chart only in a plain sheet of paper because we don't require a graph. Now observe this diagram carefully. So first draw a circle of whatever diameter you want. Then from the starting point, that is here, you have to draw a straight line such that it touches the right side of the circle. So you have to start from the center of the circle and then draw this straight line. Next, using the protractor, you have to keep the protractor at the center of the circle, and then using the inner scale of the protractor, you have to mark the angle as 53. Then you can write the component as customs within it, or if you want, you can give a separate index also at this side, mentioning that you can use a different type of shading and then mention that that particular type of shading stands for custom. Next, you have to place the protractor on this straight line and then mark the next angle as 127 and write within that particular sector the term as excise. Next, keep the protractor on this horizontal line, okay, and then mark the angle 106 degrees and within this sector write income tax. Next, keep the protractor on this line and then mark the angle as 50 and the sector details as corporate tax. Next, whatever is remaining over here, so when you keep the scale here, the next angle which is remaining will be 23 degrees, and this you can mark it as miscellaneous. Please write it within the sector. So this is the way you have to draw the pie chart. So the angle formula will carry 1 mark, and then after drawing the pie chart along with the degrees and mentioning what are the components in each of the sectors, or you can draw a separate index and also mention by using different types of colors and shading, this will carry 4 marks. So the formula of the angle will carry 1 mark and the rest of the diagram will carry 4 marks. So note that the ogive should be drawn only on a graph sheet. So let us mark the x-axis. So on the x-axis, we have to take the upper limits and the lower limits of the class interval, or it just means that we have to take the class intervals on the x-axis and we have to take the cumulative frequencies on the y-axis. So now observe that you have to start with 0 on the x-axis and 1 centimeter, that is this small square which you can see, it is 1 centimeter. I start with the lower limit of the first class interval, that is 100, and then the next centimeter is 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 and 700. So on the x-axis you take the limits of the class interval and then mark here daily wages in rupees. So each centimeter, that is each square, is equal to 100 units. So we have to write the scale as x-axis 1 centimeter is equal to 100 units. Then if you check all the cumulative frequencies, that is in the less than cumulative frequency column and more than cumulative frequency column, you'll see that the least value is 20 and the highest value is 230. So I have taken on the y-axis 1 centimeter as 20 units. So for this first centimeter you mark 20, next centimeter 40, 60, 80, and it continues up to 240. So the scale for the y-axis is 1 centimeter is equal to 20 units, and here please write cumulative frequencies. So after marking the x-axis, y-axis and writing the scale, next let us learn how to mark values for the y-axis. I have taken this small square that is 1 centimeter, marked it separately here just for explanation purpose. So this is 20 and this is 40. Now for you to find out how much is each line, you know that in each square like this you will have 10 lines. So to find out what is the value of each line, you have to calculate 40 minus 20, that is equal to 20. And because each square has 10 lines, 20 divided by 10, you will get 2. So what does it mean? It means that in this square, the first line here is 20. The next immediate line will be 22. Then 24, 26, 28, 30. So this middle line over here, this will be equal to 30. Then after 30, the next one will be 32, 34, 36, 38, and then you will get 40. Whereas for the x-axis, here the difference from 0 to 100 is 100, and after that also the difference remains as 100. So it means that if this is 0, the next line will be 10, then you'll have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So this is how you will know the value of each line in a square. Now to draw the less than ogive. So you have to make use of the upper limit 200, then mark it with the corresponding less than CF, that is 20. Then 300 is plotted against 60. 400 is plotted against, so 400 is plotted against the value 140. Then similarly 500 is plotted against the value which is 200, 600 is plotted against 220, and 700 is plotted against 230. So then join all these points by a smooth curve and you will get the less than ogive. Next, to draw the more than ogive, you have to take the lower limit of the first class interval 100 and mark it corresponding to the greater than CF, which is 230. Then 200 is plotted against 210, 300 is plotted against 170, 400 is plotted against 90, then 500 it is plotted against 30, and 600 it is plotted against 10. Then all these points are joined by a smooth curve and that is marked as the greater than ogive. So once you've marked the less than ogive and the more than ogive, at the intersection of these two curves, you have to drop a perpendicular to the x-axis in the form of a dotted line. The point where the perpendicular touches the x-axis, that you mark it as M, which stands for the median. And if you observe carefully in your graph, you will find out that the median value is 370. So you can write from the graph M is equal to 370. The 18th question, draw a histogram for the following data and hence locate the value of the mode graphically. So they have given us the class intervals 20 to 25, 25 to 30, up to 45 to 50. Observe that the class intervals are of equal width and the corresponding frequencies are 6, 18, 25, 14, 10 and 8. So if the class intervals are of equal width, then on the x-axis in the graph sheet, we have to take the class intervals and we have to take the frequencies on the y-axis. Suppose the class intervals are of unequal width. So it is important that you check the problem carefully. So the class intervals are of unequal width on the x-axis. You have to take the class intervals, and on the y-axis you have to calculate the frequency densities, that is F divided by W. But in this problem, all the class intervals are of the same width, and hence what we do is we take the class intervals on the x-axis and then we take the frequencies on the y-axis. So on the x-axis, first you draw the line for the x-axis, mark 0. Then the first lower limit of the class interval is 20. So 1 centimeter, that is this one square which you see is 1 centimeter, mark as 20. Next is 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Similarly, if you see the frequencies, the least is 6 and the highest is 25. So on the y-axis, I have taken each square as 2 units. So this is 2, 4, 6 and it continues up to 26. So next we have to write the scale. Scale is x-axis 1 centimeter is equal to 5 units and y-axis 1 centimeter is equal to 2 units. Now observe that here on the x-axis the difference from 0 to 20 is 20, but after that the difference is only 5. So we have to draw what is called as the broken line, or this is also called as the kink. So you use the kink if the difference is different throughout on either the x-axis or the y-axis. On the y-axis, the difference from the beginning till the end is 2, so there's no need to use the kink. Next, let us find out what is the value of each line in the square. So for example, if you take this square, that is 1 centimeter on the x-axis, this is 20 and this is 25. So each line will be 0.5 in the square for the x-axis. How did we get this 0.5? For example, it is 25 minus 20 is equal to 5. And you know that in each square there will be 10 lines. So 5 divided by 10 is equal to 0.5. Similarly, on the y-axis, if we take a square, it will have 10 lines and each line in that square will be 0.2. How did we get this 0.2? 4 minus 2 is equal to 2. 2 divided by 10 lines in each square, that is 0.2. So what does this mean? If this is 20 on the x-axis, the next line will be 20 plus 0.5, that is 20.5. Next will be 21, 21.5, 22, 22.5 up to 25. On the y-axis, if this is 2, the next line will be 2 plus 0.2. So 2.2, 2.4, 2.6, 2.8 and this center line here will be 3. Then 3.2, 3.4, 3.6, 3.8 and 4. So please learn how to identify what is the value of each line. Now start with the first class interval. The first class interval is 20 to 25. So taking the first class interval as the base of the rectangle, you should draw a rectangle with height of 6. That is a corresponding frequency. Similarly, for 25 to 30, draw the height of the rectangle up to 18. Then for 30 to 35, you have to draw the rectangle with height as 25. Then 35 to 40, the height of the rectangle is up to 14. 40 to 45, the height of the rectangle is 10. And for 45 to 50, the height of the rectangle is 8. So once you draw the rectangular bars, this is called as the histogram. Next, we need to find out the mode graphically. So to find out the mode graphically, you should find out which is the highest rectangle. So the highest rectangle is corresponding to the class interval 30 to 35. Next, using the extreme top left of the highest rectangle, you have to draw a diagonal such that it touches the lower limit of the succeeding class interval. And then using the top right of the highest rectangle, draw a diagonal such that it touches the upper limit of the preceding class interval. So once you've drawn these two diagonals, then you drop a perpendicular to the x-axis, and a point where the curve touches the x-axis is the value of z. So this point over here, you should mark it as z, and then you can write from the graph z, that is the mode, is equal to 32. So it can be like 32.5 or little close to it. Even though you don't get the accurate value, you will be given the marks. So the correct answer is z is equal to 32. Subdivision B, the mean marks of students of class A and class B were 75 and 68 respectively. If there are 80 students in class A and 70 students in class B, find the combined mean marks of class A and class B students. So let me just change the spelling in a question paper for class. So now they've asked us to find out the combined mean marks. So all of you are aware that the combined mean for two sets of data is denoted by x bar 1 2 is equal to n1 x bar 1 plus n2 x bar 2 divided by n1 plus n2. But I am going to modify the formula in terms of the information which is given. So let me first write down what is given in the problem. So the mean marks of students of class A and class B, they've used the word mean. So when they've used the word mean for class A, I will denote it as x bar A. So the bar is important. It stands for the mean of class A. This is equal to 75, and the mean for the second class B, that is x bar B, this is equal to 68. Then they have said that there are 80 students in class A. So the number of observations for class A, I will depict it as NA. This is equal to 80. Similarly, the number of students in class B is denoted by NB is equal to 70. Now, let us write, consider the combined mean . So it is denoted by x bar. Subscript I will write as AB because there are two classes. This is equal to NA x bar A plus NB into x bar B divided by NA plus NB. So note that this A and B's are only subscript. The other formula which you have learned is x bar 1 2 is equal to n1 x bar 1 plus n2 x bar 2 divided by n1 plus n2. If you're not confident enough in writing the combined mean formula in terms of the problem, you can use this also. That is the general formula of the combined mean for two sets of data. Now substitute the values. So it is 80 into 75 plus 70 into 68 divided by 80 plus 70. So this simplifies to 6000 plus 4760 divided by 150, which further simplifies to 10,760 divided by 150. So finally you get x bar AB, that is the combined mean marks for both classes together, as 71.73, and you can write the unit of measurement as marks. Coming to the last section, section E, 8th main, answer any one of the following questions. So each of these questions will carry 5 marks. So the 19th question, following is the data regarding the IQ of 30 children of a school. So they have listed down the IQ of 30 children. Then the question is, prepare a frequency distribution with class intervals less than 90, 90 to 110, 110 to 120 and greater than or equal to 120. So please note that here the class intervals are already specified. So you shouldn't use the range, Sturge's rule and the width of the class interval for any calculation. So first form a table with the column as IQ and write down the class intervals as specified in the question. That is less than 90, 90 to 110, 110 to 120, greater than or equal to 120. In next column, you will need the tally marks and the last column will be number of children. So to make the computations easy, all the values which are less than 90, I have put it in the first column. The only value is 65. Then between the range 90 and 110. So here you should note that 90 will be included, whereas 110 is not included in this class interval. So the values which lie in the range 90 to actually 109, because we are not considering 110. 110 value will get included in the succeeding class interval. So the values between 90 to 109 are these values which I have listed. Now for the class interval 110 to 120, you have to include the value 110, but 120 value is not included. Please understand this concept correctly. So if I do that, these are the values which are there in the class interval 110 to actually 119. Then greater than or equal to 120 means you will have the value 120 and all the other values which are greater than 120 also. So these are the set of values. So for less than 90, there is only one value 65. So you have to put one tally mark. Next, for the next one, that is 90 to 109 actually, the total number of values which are there are 18. Here it is only 1, here it is 18. Then here you have 7, and for greater than or equal to 120, you have 4 values. So you have to put the tally marks as 18. So this is 15, 16, 17, 18. Then for 110 to 120, there are 7 tally marks. And for greater than or equal to 120, there are 4 tally marks. So now one tally mark, you write 1. Here the total number of tally marks are 18. Then here you have 7 and the next one is 4. So capital N is equal to 30 and number of children will be the frequencies F and IQ will be the class intervals. The last question, 20th one, calculate the arithmetic mean for the following frequency distribution. So heights in centimeters are given in the first column, 135 to 140, 140 to 145, up to 170 to 175. The number of students are 4, 9, 18, 28, 24, 10, 5 and 2. So the first step is to mark the heights as class interval and the number of students as the frequency F. The next step is to find out capital N, which is the sum of the frequencies, which is equal to 100. Now observe that because the class intervals and frequencies are given, the data is of the continuous type. The next important step is to check whether the class intervals are inclusive or exclusive. We observe that the class intervals are of the exclusive format. If they are of the inclusive format, then you have to convert them to exclusive and then solve the problem. So now let us start with the formula. You can write, we know that the formula for the arithmetic mean for continuous data is x bar equal to summation fx divided by capital N. Now before we do any sort of calculation, it is important to find out x. So x is nothing but the midpoint of each of the class intervals, and if you're aware, midpoint is nothing but the lower limit plus the upper limit divided by 2. So it is 135 plus 140. When we divide by 2, we get 137.5. So in a similar way, you can find out the remaining midpoints: 142.5, 147.5, 152.5, 157.5, 162.5, 167.5, and 172.5. Then we just have one more column to form, that is fx. So the frequency should be multiplied by the corresponding x values. So if you do that, you will get 550, 1282.5, 2655, 4270, 3780, 1625, 837.5, then you have 345. So next you find out summation fx, which is 15,345. So substituting the totals in the main formula, it is 15,345 divided by 100. So you get x bar is equal to 153.45, and you can express the answer in terms of centimeters because we are finding out the mean height of students. I do hope that the question paper which I have solved for the first PUC students is useful to many of you. Thank you all for watching, and do practice the questions so that you can perform better in the next test or exam. Thank you.